we're still driving here on our road trip, and we're making another video. This one is going to be on the Science of Enlightenment, right? This is a very exciting subject. So again, I hope everybody enjoys the video. So the Science of Enlightenment, we may be wondering, you know, or whoever, like why take this sacred kind of spirituality and dissect it with, you know, modern objective science and all this? And again, the scientists may be wondering, you know, what are you talking about? A science of spirituality? That's just, it's ridiculous. You know, that's like a move in the wrong direction. You know, we got things figured out. We got particle accelerators. You know, we can create the Big Bang itself. You know, miniature sized. And look at all the atoms. Find the God particle. What do we need? You know, the science of spirituality or enlightenment? But in truth, the science of enlightenment is going to be the most beneficial study ever conducted on this planet, by far. It will produce the largest evolution in human knowledge and human capacity and human health and human potential than anything else. That we could, you know, study or investigate. And so it's very exciting, the Science of Enlightenment. The first hurdle, because part of the reason, you know, the science you can understand, you know, feels a little bit threatened by such a study, because really science itself, the so-called modern objective science, you know, based on a materialistic point of view, is on a very shaky ground. And what I mean by that is this view, you know, when it comes to consciousness, human consciousness, this view that our mind or awareness or consciousness is somehow a secretion or epiphenomenon of this brain inside a body and a nervous system. And it's so complex. There's so many neural pathways and billions of neurons that, you know what, it just kind of evolved out of that. Or you know what, maybe there's no such thing as consciousness. It's just kind of this kind of, you know, illusion of atoms that came together and just created this kind of notion. And the thing is, that view, from a spiritual perspective, is probably one of the most destructive things you could possibly accept. And I highly recommend that anybody that is giving you that view, or any kind of group or so-called science or teacher or institution that is operating with that view, I would ignore. I would not listen to that. It's very, very destructive. But that's what's going on. That's, you know, we're just kind of, well, yeah, you know, science has shown that there's all this movement in the brain, and, you know, that's where the mind is just kind of coming from this. And it's absurd. Because the opposite is true. The consciousness that is, yeah, it's being received. You know, the brain and nervous system is the receiver. It's like the operating system, but the consciousness itself is all pervasive. It's all powerful. It's this immutable, you know, bliss and awareness and intelligence that exists in all things, and is essentially one. You can't have you know, my consciousness and your consciousness. certainly we all have a unique experience, subjective experience. Everybody experiences the world in their own way. No doubt, yeah, there's that uniqueness there, dependent on your nervous system and conditioning and all this. But the consciousness is the same, right? It's just like the radio signals coming, from the radio. You could have 1,000 different kinds of radios, right? You could be, the same radio station playing the same music. You could be, listening to it with earphones or, some huge sound system, It would completely change the experience, but the radio waves are no different. So it's kind of like that. And of course we can't see it. We can't see consciousness in the air, but that should be understood by now. Look, we're existing with pretty much the sum of human understanding and knowledge is in the air, right? Look at this Wi-Fi technology. All this, somehow this internet is just existing in the air, and if you just have the right equipment, you can download anything you want. Anywhere. So certainly with that kind of understanding, but you don't see the Wi-Fi waves or you don't see it in the air, of course. But if you have the right equipment, you can hook into it and have all the knowledge and send an email. And the same thing with consciousness, right? If you have the right equipment, a human nervous system and other other sentient beings on different degrees. There's all kinds of degrees of receptivity, and even within the variation of two human beings can have completely different receiving technology, completely different cultured nervous systems. Not even culture, but a physical adaptation can be completely different. And in the same so-called environment, they could be receiving completely different experiences. So that's the way consciousness works, and right now there's actually lots of studies and research is showing that consciousness, is not existing just in the brain, that it's actually a non-local phenomenon. And Dr. Yamamoto's, or Dr. Emoto's research is showing this, right? Very clearly. It's probably the most prominent example, showing that, look, if you just have a glass of water and have a couple people send out a positive emotion or thought or word onto that glass of water, the molecular structure of the water itself is going to change. It's changing. Which means that something is interacting with those water molecules, and we can say, oh, just some kind of vibration coming off the body or some kind of something like that, but that's not true, because he's done this study over large distances, right? Maybe something like 1,000 miles away, somebody in a completely different city. I'll just show them a picture or video of the water and say, look, have some kind of thought or mental interaction. And in the same way, nearly the same way, the molecular structure of the water changes depending on that person's thought or emotion 1,000 miles away. So clearly, you can't be explained by any kind of subtle physical activity, right? It's a non-local act of consciousness. And now, spiritually speaking, this has been known for thousands of years, right? And this is again where we talk about the shaky foundation of this so-called objective sciences, because that's something that is very threatening. It's 1,000 times more threatening than the notion that the Earth is not the center of the galaxy, right? Or the solar system, that the sun, is this massive structure creating gravity. Look how we had to fight over that idea for hundreds of years. So it's a revolutionary idea, but the effects, again, just like gravity existed for thousands of years without people knowing, having any kind of concept or understanding. Apples were still falling from trees for thousands of years. And it just, up until Newton saw, hey, look, maybe there's an actual, phenomenon that we can study, and we can make it a universal principle of the cosmos. So if we can do that with an apple falling from a tree, well, certainly we can do that for consciousness and the manifestations, right, of spiritual powers, or telepathy. All these things can clearly, be studied objectively. It's not a quantum leap. All it is just a resistance, a barrier, of a worldview. It's not a scientific barrier. We have the technology, we have the instrumentology, to study these things. If we can spend billions of dollars to study atoms, so certainly we can spend a couple $100,000 to study an enlightened being, right? This doing, exhibiting miracles, or just physically, it has an altered nervous system, right? Because the spiritual process has physical components, right? Now, of course, there's always going to be eternally, there will be a sacred dimension, or you could call it a mystical dimension that goes beyond any kind of quantification. Measurement. Of course, that will always be there, but that doesn't mean that we can't, come down and say, look, let's look at some of these phenomenons of people meditating for 30 years straight, or doing yoga, or the process of Kundalini awakening, right? Awakening this inner potential energy. I mean, my God, the effects are profound on a physical level. It can easily be looked at. And so that's what the Science of Enlightenment is about. It's about kind of getting away from these kind of dogmatic religious beliefs, or dogmatic, probably even more dogmatic scientific beliefs. Said, look, we're going to have to let go of this notion that consciousness is limited to the mind. I'm sorry. It's no longer acceptable. And once we have that kind of opening, it's like, wow, consciousness is this universal phenomenon. And each individual is eternally connected to this consciousness. You can't disconnect yourself. Even if you try or ignore that, or just feel, oh, I'm just a big bundle of atoms. What are you talking about? There's no radiance of self. You can't destroy it. Right? Like the Upanishads say, you can't burn it, it doesn't die, you can't. It's eternal. But again, so these ideas are a little abstract for science. So the point is to focus on the actual techniques of spirituality. Because these techniques are not just superstitious, wishy-washy things that have been passed down for thousands of years. This is an inner science. And so really the Science of Enlightenment is about, at the same time we, as technology and our ability to observe, increases through technology, it's at the same time going, looking at the past and understanding, being open to these inner scientists, right? For thousands of years, these yogis and rishis that developed the inner science of consciousness. Because they, however it happened initially, whether it was an accident or some kind of divine grace, or a couple of beings awakening from meditation to have this experience and tap into this cosmic consciousness, right? They didn't just stop at that. They said, look, let's let's make a science out of this, just like modern science wants to replicate an experiment, you know, wants to show it under different conditions. The same way these rishis and yogis were experimenting with consciousness, and let's see how we can, you know, transmit this understanding, this awareness, or let's see how we can prepare, you know, the body and the nervous system to accept this, to be able to realize this more subtle vibration of consciousness all the way to the eternal self, which again is maybe a little bit extreme idea for science, but just initially to be able to look at the phenomenon of telepathy or whatever it is, which again is already being exhibited in Dr. Emoto's research, amongst others. So that's the main thing, the first understanding of the science of enlightenment is that consciousness exists beyond the mind and body.